Andrew, if you look at pound, and we did have a great pound chart, which we'll bring up a little bit later, it basically seems that, the currency markets are giving the benefit of the doubt to Theresa May on whether she can pass it through Parliament. Is that dangerous?
Well, I don't know if it's dangerous. I think the range of outcomes are so broad at this stage. And as David was pointing out, there's still 2 weeks to go and polls can shift. And we've seen a number of political events in the last couple of years that we thought seemed very likely to play out, not playing out. So I don't know if it's just very hard to discount that. And of course, even if the first vote doesn't get through, maybe there's something can happen and there is a second vote. So again, it's hard to discount the next phase of this, even if you said, well, let's just assume for a moment the vote doesn't go through. It's not clear what the outcome is after that. So I think it's very hard for markets to discount that.
Right, but how should the market, position themselves? The other line of thought was that it'd be like a TARP scenario, that the first vote doesn't go through, markets tank, Parliament panics, and they vote it the second time. That's now unlikely given that market talks about it, and so probably prices something in. Something in,
yeah. I was never a huge buyer of that scenario because, of course, TARP was very specific. It was an action to bail out the banks, and of course, you're right, the market tank's like, oh, we really need to do something. This is different, right? This is a long-term situation, and it's not about rescuing something. So I just wonder how many politicians will change their mind because sterling falls 2, 3, 4%, whatever it might be. I just wonder how much they will really change their mind around that, because again, these are sort of more ideological positions that the MPs are taking, and I think it's interesting that Theresa May is going to the people. Do you see some change in the polls, and do politicians feel, well, I have to reflect that from my constituency? So I think it's going to be a fascinating 2 weeks.
Okay, so again, to the markets, has it been played out on some of the equities? Do you look at what Mark Carney does and says?
Yeah, I think Mark Carney's got a really tough job, right, trying to navigate his way through this, and I think they'll look beyond that and say, well, what are the things that we expect to happen, and we've got to react to those. I think the equity market is particularly difficult because, as you're aware, the FTSE 100 companies, 80% of the revenues of those companies come from outside of the UK. So, of course, a weaker pound is generally better for those companies from a revenue point of view. So I think the outcome on the equity market is pretty hard to determine. I think sterling is the clearest one. That's probably how people are playing this is, if it's a bad outcome, we get that uncertainty, then you'll see further weakness in sterling. Now, of course, the opposite can also apply. If it gets through, I don't think the market has priced in that either, and we could see a pop in sterling. So I think from an investment point of view, it's a very binary outcome. Frankly, from our position, we're staying pretty close to home. It's a hard thing for us to take a view on. This is a political outcome that I'm not sure we have any insight on. I'm not sure anyone.
No, I'm not sure anyone does. You're absolutely right on that.